Hello and welcome to Around the Clock. Today we are speaking with Jane Greenstein and Rajashree Ghosh from Ashland is United. Ladies, welcome to Around the Clock.
Thank you for having us.
Jane, you and I have had an opportunity to speak before here on Around the Clock, but Rajashree, this is your first time.
It is.
So welcome. I think it's been a little too long. You've been doing a lot of good things here in town.
Well, yeah. I mean, Ashland is United has been such a boon to many of us, including me. And so it's been allowing us to express our own thoughts and feelings and being with the community and celebrating the community. So it's been wonderful.
So tell us a little bit about what Ashland is United is. We've seen the signs around town. We've heard about some of the forums and get-togethers that you do. What is the main mission of Ashland is United?
Thank you, Yolanda. So our purpose is to help be a leader, and not the only organization, but a leading organization in creating a culture of inclusivity and acceptance in Ashland. We want to aim to make sure that all members of our community feel welcome and accepted and that they belong equally in our town. So that's sort of our mission, and our charge is to do two things then to try to help make that happen. One, to build and strengthen bridges where they don't yet exist between and among members of our community, and to educate and expose people to new ideas and information that will help them see that we have differences that are worth celebrating, and also that in our differences we have more in common sometimes than we are different.
What are some of the events that you've done to bring about and meet these goals?
Mm-hmm. So we started really our first events were in 2017. We started our mission in 2000, we started our existence in 2016. It took us about a year to fully grow into, a group of people that was functioning and meeting and connected enough to start planning things. So we started in the beginning with programming around things that are already part of the common human experience: music, dance, and food. We ran some programs through Ashland Day to try to get some of the entertainment at Ashland Day in 2017 to be more inclusive, more multicultural. We ran a couple of programs, Baking Bread and Breaking Bread. Or Breaking Bread was the first one together, and then Baking Bread together, where we used bread and the different versions of bread that are common in different lands and regions of the world to help people understand the meaning that bread and food in general has from our culture.
I remember both of those events. They were so great because it was a way to come together and share and learn about different food and how they're different, but there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. And we always want whatever we're doing, whether it's focusing on, music and culture or on food, to be a portal or a pathway for people being able to share their stories in a way that people feel. It's hard when you say it is important to learn about somebody else. Most people aren't going to sign up for that.
Right.
Come, let's share food together. Let's enjoy different kinds of music together. And in the process, talk about the culture that music or that food comes from. It helps to make a safer, easier way to connect. And that is really, we want people to want to learn about each other. In these times, it's so easy to stay within your group with the people that that you feel safe and comfortable with, and there's an importance in that. We all need that in our lives, but we also need to learn to appreciate each other across those groups.
So the last year you haven't been able to have in-person events, but I don't think you were sitting back and not doing anything. How did you overcome the pandemic and still bring people together?
Yes, I mean, it was a strange year for all of us. And we realized internally that we needed to check on each other. And that resulted in increasing the frequency of our meetings. So earlier, the group met once a month. And after the pandemic, we were meeting each week on Wednesdays. And it felt like, our weeks began on Wednesdays. It was, you look forward to Wednesdays. So because we realized that we were in isolation, the community was also in isolation, and we needed to connect with each other. So in the early part of the pandemic, we started what we call the Grandmother's Basket, which was a collection of stories. So if you remember from childhood, when you say something like, once upon a time, and it takes you to a wonderful world of stories. And these stories may have been handed to you by grandmothers, grandfathers, parents, relatives, or just some memory. So we collected those stories, our own and from the community, just for us to have an opportunity to connect with each other and remind us that we're all part of the same community. And while we were planning that, and by the way, that's still ongoing. We're still collecting stories.
Oh, good.
And we're posting them on our website. We've posted them on Facebook, just to share, so that even if you're not part of our inner circle, you get to witness them. So you can find those. Yes.
Oh, great.
Absolutely. And while we were planning that, the unfortunate and heinous murder of George Floyd occurred. And so in June of last year, Ashland is United collaborated with Ashland Indians, Makeda Keegan, and an array of groups, and of course WACA-TV, to organize a virtual vigil called Stand Up Ashland that helped the community to express support for anti-racism. Following this in the fall, I believe, yes, we organized a virtual event called Meaningful Meal. Again, surrounding the recurring theme of food, we gather around for deeper conversation. And it allowed us to have conversation about learning from each other, creating brave spaces where we went beneath the headlines to understand each other. And then we had follow-up coffee meetings also.
All virtual.
All virtual.
All virtual, yes.
I was going to say, I want to go to those. Those sound like fun.
Yes, they were. And in fact, we got so much out of it that we presented a report to the town manager, because it was wonderful to see people, meet people, and connect with them in ways that we hadn't earlier. Yeah. And so we received feedback from the same participants and developed a 2-part series virtual event called Curious Community. And we used personal stories that were rooted in culture that helped us really understand that we are different and yet interconnected.
Yep.
And we used Tree of Life as a visual metaphor to work through our values, our aspirations, and inspirations. So there were 2 events, and really we were so thrilled and so appreciative of all the participation we had.
And what kind of participation did you have in these virtual events?
It ranged, we had participation from members of the community who we had never seen or heard about. There are people who want to connect, who've lived in Ashland for decades and didn't know each other.
Wow.
And then for people that participated, want to know us more. So in the future, we're planning, in-person meetups, if possible, if the situation allows. And so, we had participation from the town administration, we had participation from other groups, and we hope to do that more and more, and hopefully in person, not virtual.
Yes.
I know.
I would say for most of our virtual events, we had about 20 participants.
Okay.
Which for a virtual event where people have to turn their camera on and talk is, I think, that can be scary. I know. We try to create, a space where people feel safe, but also that they can take some risks. And so we kind of don't, in that setting, we don't want to have 70 people like we had at our Breaking Bread event.
Right.
We want it to be more intimate, but we really look forward as in the future, when we can gather together, at having a sort of a balance. That we run some bigger programming again, so that we can have a broad reach like we did with Breaking Bread or Ashland Day, but that we also can continue these smaller spaces and conversations where people can really get to know each other, really, not superficially.
Right. Well, it's great. I always love the people who here in Ashland as volunteers find a need that needs to be met, and they fill that need. And I believe that's what the 2 of you with Ashland is United is doing for our community. And it's so wonderful to see.
Thank you.
Thank you. The other thing I want to just emphasize is that we also really, it hasn't happened so much during COVID, obviously, but before, and we continue to hope that we can also collaborate and with other groups in town who are running events. Our mission is to make sure that an inclusive mindset is pushed into all programming in town. And so if we can help and partner with other communities, groups that are running things to help them open up their mindset or connect with people that can participate, that will make it more inclusive and reach a broader array of people, then that's part of our vision too. And lastly, we want to make sure that we're reminding our leaders in town, who are wonderful people and have actually done an amazing job at trying to create an inclusive community. But we're here also just sometimes we might have an idea that hasn't been thought of. So for example, a couple of years ago, we helped to raise the question of there should be a pride flag that's flown in June, which is Pride Month, to support our LGBTQ plus community and that was an idea that we had that the town wonderfully ran with and supported and is now owning. And so those kinds of initiatives are also part of our mission. And we welcome members of our community who might have a suggestion about something that we can advocate for to reach out to us and give us an idea, because we are only a small team. We may not know of everything that might be valuable.
Well, and I truly believe that for a community to be working well, it is a partnership between elected officials and town staff and the residents of that community.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, Jane, as elected, being an elected person, you can't always know everything. You can't always know everybody. But it's important to hear that information and work with it and work with the people who are supporting those initiatives. So again, I think what you're doing is important. And I'm so glad to have had you here on Around the Clock. Now, Jane, I believe you've gone through this little exercise that I'm about to do. Rajashree, there's a question I ask all first-time visitors to Around the Clock. I'm hoping Jane didn't tell you about this. Oh, good. It's actually pretty easy.
Okay, good.
Is there something about you, Rajashree, that not many people may know, but that you'd be willing to share with our viewers?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I learned Indian classical music, which is called Hindustani classical. And I learned it for about 4 years before I had to give up because, education took over my mind. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy classical music of any kind.
Yep.
And whenever I hear Hindustani classical, it's like, I forget everything around me. So
is it as intricate as Indian dance?
Which Indian dance? Because there are a plethora of Indian dance methods.
I don't know which one. I know I've known a number of people who have studied and who have performed.
It's similar, but so Indian classical dances, the ones that you see around in town often is Bharatanatyam, which is from the south.
Okay.
There is Orisi, which is from the east. There's Manipuri, again, further east. There's Kathak, which is from the north. So there are various traditions of classical dance. And Hindustani classical music is also from the north.
Okay.
And so it's a 6-year study, intensive study, theory and practice. And then you get a degree at the end of it, but most people can't pass. It's tedious, especially if you want to go to school and study and get another education. Gets a bit. So I couldn't complete it, but I do understand the nuances of Hindustani classical music.
Wow, great. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for allowing me to
Before I let you both go, anything coming up that our viewers should be aware of that Ashland is United is doing?
So if the town and the state allows, we're looking to organize in-person gatherings so that people who've met on our virtual events can see each other and discuss further plans together. We are hoping to do that. Fingers crossed it should be out and announced very soon.
We have a website, www.ashlandisunited.org, all one word. You can always find out what's going on there. You can also go to the website to view the stories that we mentioned,
Okay.
to send us an email to ask for a yard sign, or to sign up for our mailing list. We have a mailing list. We have over 100 people on our mailing list
Great.
from the town. And so that's another way to make sure you know when we're running something. And lastly, we are always looking for people to get involved in our leadership team. We've been meeting virtually. My guess is we're going to continue meeting virtually because it makes it a lot easier for people to carve out an hour in their workday, because we do meet in the morning on a weekday.
Okay.
And so if you're interested, just send us an email, ashlandisunited@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to have a conversation, let you know a little bit more about who we are and how you might get involved.
Great. Well, Jane, it's one of those mornings, people. Jane, Rajashree, thank you so much for coming on Around the Clock, and thank you for the great work that you do for our community.
Same to you, Yolanda. Thank you.
And we'll be back with more Around the Clock.